Good.
Thanks to everyone for being here this morning for the first board meeting of the year. Hopefully we're looking at a good 2026. So we call it to order, or we'll do a roll call and we just get started. We'll pledge allegiance first. Flag is right here.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, let's do the roll call. Mr. Ken Jones, I'm present. Mr. Gary Farmer.
After a lengthy absence, I am back on here present. So,
Mr. Rob Boyette.
Present.
Mr. Dave Dole.
Here. Present.
Sharon Lott. Is Sharon here? Is she online? Oh,
I don't see her.
no, I don't see her. I thought it was she's not here. Okay. And Kevin Earp.
Here.
And Rachel.
I'm here.
Our legal counsel. So, you have the agenda in your presence, and is there any changes or you wish to make in that or at this time? Any additions or subtractions?
I would like to add,
Sharon Lott, she online.
Sharon Lott's
She's
online.
online, okay, gotcha.
I'm sorry, I was struggling. Oh my gosh, but I got it on. It's on now.
I would like to add our repairs and renovations, as well as accountability for our school report card discussion.
Okay. And where are we going to put that, in new business or under?
That would be under new business.
Okay.
I apologize for having to add that, but it came in late.
It's not closed session material, so. And what those two again was,
R&R.
okay,
Mr. Chairman,
yeah,
with the addendum of the agenda, I would like to approve it as presented.
with changes, yeah, with the changes, okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion on the agenda itself? If not, we're going to move forward. All in favor? Opposed, same sign? All right. We'll move right on to approval of the minutes. You have the minutes in the package. I'm not sure they were sent out ahead of time.
They were set out ahead of time.
So, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
without any corrections, I move we approve the minutes of December 17th, 2025.
It's been moved that we approve the minutes of December 17th, 2025. Do I have a second?
I second.
Dave Goldman, second. All in favor? Say
Aye.
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 By like sign. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Let's move right along to Mrs. Cheryl. Our new celebrations and activities.
Yes, and so we closed out our first semester with a wonderful Christmas celebration that was well attended by families, as well as our board chair and our attorney. And so the students really had a great time. They spent some time with signing Santa and Mrs. Claus and the reindeer dog, and did a lot of different activities, and really enjoyed themselves. So we were excited to see all that. We also opened January 6th with 46 students. So we were excited However, we did have to determine 2 of our students ineligible to remain. So based on some behavior that was displayed, so we are down to 44, but we do have some inquiries, some additional inquiries, and we'll hopefully build that rate back up. Our end of the semester awards we just had last week, and that again was very well attended. We had quite a few families that came, and we had a group from Mr. Kent's church that actually came and saw what was going on, and they were really excited and want to come back to other events that we have as well. So it was great to see outsiders come in and be impressed with our students. They did a little performance about the 3 little pigs, and we had all the way down from kindergarten to high school students that participated in the play, and they did a great job signing all the parts, and it was just wonderful to see the students in that light, so to speak.
Who is Mr. Kent? I'm sorry.
Mr. Kent is our principal.
Oh, the principal, okay. I thought you were talking to somebody outside of the school. I'm sorry. That I knew, okay.
He's actually from Wilson,
Yeah.
and has worked in some of the local schools, so he's well connected in the area.
Yeah, I know it.
So, but we recognize students for perfect attendance, A honor roll, A B honor roll, highest average, grade point average, as well as most improved student. We did a character award. We recognized our athletic teams for participation and their season so far, as well as our robotics team. And then we did a professional development on AI, and Mandy actually presented the presentation that she's going to do at the symposium. So our teachers got information about great ways and effective prompts to use with AI that would avoid, using student data and confidential information to help them speed up some of the requirements that they need to do on a daily basis. We also have our EIPA interpreting test scheduled. We have 3 sessions scheduled in January, 5 sections scheduled in February, and 6 in March, and they are all full.
Wow.
So we are really excited about that. So that is offering people opportunities to get their interpreting test. We also had one of our interpreters that still needed to do the test, and she passed. She took the test back in September and just got the results. So we were really excited for Lane and got that information yesterday. So okay. We have our national. Oh, I'm sorry. That's the end of our celebration.
Okay. So we'll move right into the
Director's report. So we have our national robotics competition for the deaf and hard of hearing. And this event is for DHH students, and it's across the country. And every year they have it in a different location. This year, the competition is going to be held in Colorado. And because this, it requires a lot of funding because of the transportation, because students would have to fly, as well as our staff members. And in the past, we've had a huge bucket of lapsed salary for those vacant positions that we've been able to do trips of this nature. Unfortunately, with us not being able to use any of the money from those 21 vacant positions that we have on hold right now, or fill those positions, we don't have those additional funds. And so we are trying to raise some funds so that we can send our students for that trip. So we're hoping that some of the fundraising ideas that our group has come up with, and then that we're trying to do as well as a school, will help fund that program. So
how much money are we talking about?
about $12,000.
Oh, so significant.
Yes.
Go ahead.
And it's, and it's one of those things where we have $12,000 that we could pull from different accounts right now, but we're also having some hot water and some heating issues. And so if we have to replace any of that, that would be money that we would have to use for that purpose. And so we don't want to run ourselves short and then not be able to deal with an emergency situation.
When is the robotics thing?
The robotics trip, I believe, is in April. I
April?
want to say, yes. And then I'll come back to that for new business. Susan Pittman is not here today. She's out ill, but she did provide, is it in here? On the left side of your folders, she did provide an update on where we're at financially.
This form here, you're talking about, right?
Yes. So if you just want to take a look at that.
This,
Is it in your better
he said it was this side.
Probably over here.
It was behind the agenda.
These guys.
So as you can see, we have operational expenses that we will continue to be able to support. It's just those unknowns and emergency type situations that can kind of get costly and draw those additional funds and usage. Any questions on that?
No, these are the normal projects that we're working on.
Yes.
Oh, that we approved before. Okay. You
That's-
mentioned something about the heat and water. Is there,
So the heat, part of the problem that we are having is twofold. One, we are still on long leave. We talked about that during our last board meeting. But the other part of it is that the systems, that we're basically able to operate the systems from afar, where you didn't have to go and do something manually to them. The systems are no longer efficient because they're outdated. And so the computer system, in fact, ILC's computer system, it's disappeared. We have no idea where it is. There's no computer that was attached to it. And so they were trying to figure out, I guess they haven't had it because it's been offline for about 6 years, that building. And so, we're not sure where all that, but it would have been out of date anyway. So the computer systems need updated, but then if you get a new computer, it's not going to work with the old system. So that's the issue we're running into in a couple of our buildings. We have determined a fix in Alford, and they're going to go in and do individual thermostats, and that will help regulate the temperature in that building. But it's going to take probably another week to 2 weeks to get those installed. So we're trying to find workarounds, but as we, put different projects online, and we'll see in the R&R that, one of the priorities will deal with all of that as well.
This is Kevin. I'm concerned about the weather, if it's becoming, if it gets colder, the cold weather is coming, and that's going to, if we have these delays, I hope we can take care of this soon.
So we are watching the weather closely. We will, I've already put an email out to the staff yesterday that we are closely monitoring the weather and to go ahead and start planning for our remote learning opportunity for at least Monday, if not for more into the week. So we are closely watching it. Initial predictions was that it was going to come in Friday evening. The latest prediction this morning was that it's going to be an all Saturday event. So, and the issue is if it's ice, it's not going to warm up for a day or two. So, we'll have to look at, but we will have the weekend to kind of see what comes in on Saturday and then make a determination. But our students and staff safety is, always our first thought, and making sure that everybody is safe, can get to school and can get to work safely, and that we can care for the students once they do get here. So that's always on the forefront of our mind.
I'd like to
Also, this is Kevin.
So without the problem, I'm thinking about the problems we're having with the heat now, like in the buildings. So, this morning was 29 degrees. I arrived here, it was 29 degrees. So that tells me that, it's not much warmer today than another day, So the buildings themselves, when everybody's gone, are the pipes going to freeze and all of that? I just want to make sure that that's not going to happen either.
Well, hopefully it won't. Our maintenance does a great job taking care of what they can, and making sure that, some safety precautions ahead of time are done, as well as dealing with issues as they arise. So hopefully, we won't have any of that, but that's always a risk.
Gary?
Mr. Chairman. Kevin, you know this as well as I. A major component in the lives of deaf children don't happen this weekend, but happen next weekend. 20 years ago, we had the best girls basketball team in the history of this school, but it snowed 20 inches, and the state of North Carolina said there would be no travel. Therefore, we could not even go to South Carolina, and our girls had to stay home. I have talked to Ms. Iannucci, and she's well aware that this cold front is going to stay with us, and whatever's on the ground probably will remain Monday, Tuesday. I don't know. But we're also going to have to look at the safety of our kids going to Knoxville, Tennessee to participate in this year's Mason-Dixon. And both of the tournaments will be held at the same place. And I don't know if we travel on Wednesday or Thursday, but we not only have to look at the window traveling, and we have to look at the window coming back. And so that is really, really tough. I do want to report this very sadly. This tournament has gone on for 75 years, and all 10 schools, their athletic associations, have turned a blind eye and let this happen in all of these states, even in North Carolina, where these kids are not allowed. Public school is not allowed. They go play tournaments on the weekends, but nobody loses that much school time. And so, for the first time ever, a charter member, Morganton, will not have a team represented at Mason-Dixon. I'm proud to say we have a boys team, and we will be represented, but this is just a little bit of history and a little bit of culture I present to you. And of course, Mrs. Iannucci knows exactly what kind of pressure she has on her.
When is Mason?
The Mason-Dixon starts the 28th, the 29th, and the 30th of this month. And I know that because it's my birthday, and they always, at every Mason-Dixon for 20-something years, that's where I had my birthday party, on the 29th at the Mason-Dixon. And Gene Watson, our cheerleader coach, always made sure I had a little cake. So You don't need to put that in the minutes, I promise you.
Okay, thank you, Gary.
Thank you. And next, we have our HR updates, if Simone wants to come up.
Good morning, good morning.
Good morning.
And good to have you back.
Oh, thank you, thank you. I went from the cold to the cold.
Only temporary.
Only temporary, yes, I will say, I appreciate North Carolina's cold better than Ohio's. So right now, we currently have 26 vacancies. We are currently reviewing 2 applications for a food service assistant position. I will be posting a bus driver position, a CPC position, which is in our maintenance department, which will be under our maintenance department for contracting. And I'm currently working on the internal auditor position that is right now with OSHR for the approval for reallocation. And we are onboarding, and I'm currently checking references for an elementary school teacher. I would like to also announce, I think I spoke at the last board meeting, I have seen an increase in applicants with ASL experience, so that is good. However, they have not met the minimum requirements for the position, but it's still nice to know that we are getting applicants that do possess ASL experience. So, other than that, it's still been pretty busy in the HR department. We are still working on the 21 positions, looking to see how those are going to go. We have started to dive in a little bit into those 21 positions due to legislation and things that we are required to have, so no issues there. That's pretty much it. Any questions?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We started another class for our ASL community classes, and we have about 30 people participating. So those are still being well attended, and quite a few people that have come back to every session that we've had. So we're excited to see that, as well as some new faces each time. So the more exposure we can get, the better for our communication and access for our the people that we serve here. So that's wonderful.
And what were the dates? Times?
They are on Tuesday evenings during this month and the first week in February. They started January 6th, but you do not have to attend every single session. He spirals back and, reviews some of the things just to make sure everyone's grasped it. So each session is a little bit different, so you can pick up and learn, every time you come. So that's how we wanted to keep it, just because we know people's lives get busy and we want them to take advantage of that opportunity and learn, as much as they
They
can.
start at 6 o'clock?
6 to 7, yes, on Tuesday evenings. That'll run through the first week of February. And next,
Okay.
we've already talked about our upcoming event for our Mason-Dixon basketball, so
Sorry.
that's okay. That's quite all right. And so that finalizes my my report.
Any questions, Cheryl, at this point?
I would like to add one thing. It's probably not a celebration that is announced, but for the 7th year in a row, the Lunch and Lions Club of Wilson, North Carolina, presented a $500 voucher to take care of 2 families, not 2 kids, but 2 families at Christmas time for their needs when it came to clothes, toys, whatever. And we are proud to do that every year, and it was handled very, very professionally here by the school.
We also, just to add to that, we also had some donations from Merck and DHHS where they brought toys for the students and some blankets and some clothing for our students right before Christmas. So we really appreciate those donations. And It was great to see how money they provided in the students' faces when they were playing with them and everything. So it was great. We really appreciate our community donors.
Okay. So if nothing else on the superintendent's report, we'll move forward to public input.
No public.
No public input today. All right. Then we move on to South Carolina Deaf Hearing and Hearing
This
Council.
is Kevin.
I'm sorry. Kevin.
Okay, so people contact me. There's an issue that we were talking about. It's closed business, but I did want to bring it up now. There's alumni who would like to be able to come and volunteer here at the school. They want to be able to work with staff and students to volunteer. And I've had people contact me who have retired and they just want to see what's going on or want to know what the process is on how to become a volunteer. So I don't know if you could add something about the process on the website, maybe on Facebook, and that way people would know what they need to do in order to be able to come and volunteer here at the school.
Yes, so we've kind of put things on hold for our website because we have to transition our website from the company that we have it with right now because the state will no longer approve the security of the company that we're using currently. They've changed some things and the company's not meeting the DIT requirements, which is pretty strict for state agencies. And so a lot of things that your LEAs may have access to, we don't always have access to those. And so we are looking to possibly go with Edleo, which is the company that a lot of the schools use. And so we have to make that transition within the next probably month or so. But we do have opportunities for people to volunteer. They do have to go through a background check though. So they would need to contact us and we would have to schedule that background check and then find out exactly what, our teachers would need assistance with and make sure that, they have a role coming in.
Okay, this is Kevin.
So us, what do you mean by us? Who is us?
Simone or myself or, yes, with HR, because she would have to do the background check.
So what do I tell them? Should I just tell them to contact you directly?
Yes, they can contact the school directly and either ask for Simone, myself, or Mandy, and we can guide them through that process.
Okay. And so maybe you should post something like that on Facebook, on the Facebook page.
Yes, we can do something like that.
Perfect, thank you.
Check.
We actually have a group of volunteers from Duke. They started an ASL program, so they have 3 levels of classes. And they said they're not fluent ASL, but they definitely know ASL. And so they want to come down and experience and help. So they are going to be coming down and meeting in the evening and planning some activities with our students. They don't require it for any specific, area minors or majors. However, it's their general curriculum because it basically qualifies as one of their world languages at Duke. So they have 6 officers that they would be bringing as well as some students from those classes. So we're eager to, get involved with them as well and have them come down and, see what the school's all about and have the students enjoy the opportunity as well.
When are they scheduled to come or?
We don't have it scheduled because they have to do their background check. So they're in the process of doing that.
Okay. I'm gonna move on. There's nothing else there. DHA's council update.
And that's Gary.
Oh,
DHA.
I was trying to think, the person.
Oh.
The organization that I was able to go and we made a presentation. Sandy, who is my cohort, or actually above me, she's the chairperson in Morganton. We made a presentation here a month or so ago, and then I went back and audited another meeting, but I was not allowed to say anything whatsoever because we are not members. The Department of Public Instruction still speaks for us. And I was really upset, and the people in the audience knew I was upset because I listened for an hour to a very, very polished presentation from DPI about how they were still serving the deaf. And I went to Tony Davis, who is the chairperson, and said, Tony, the two schools want membership, and I know they have to do it legislatively, and the legislative body is not in a position yet to do it. But please, please give us the right to speak up in these meetings. Now, we could in the work breakout sessions, but they're two separate breakout sessions, one's for interpreters and then one's for schools and everything else. And he said that he would have to check to see how quickly that could happen because he felt like that's absolutely correct. We now stand alone in every way, and we should be able to speak for ourselves to this august body. Then he came back to me after he checked and he said, Gary, I have 2 vacancies right now, but they are non-voting member vacancies, and you'll have to wait till the legislature comes back, and then you'll have to get the people that you that serve you, whether it's Blackwell in Burke County for Morganton, and then of course down here we'll have to see who can help us the best. Probably in this case it will not be Dante Pittman, but it will be Buck Newton, and then they would put us on the committee as a voting member, but that's going to take some time. I said it must be 2, and Sandy agreed with me. I can speak for Morganton because I talk for them all the time, but I can't speak for Morganton. Sandy, who is in Morganton, can speak for us because we do talk, but she can't speak for us. So it's got to be 2 representations, not just 1. And so Tony is well aware of this, and he is pushing for this. But we will have to do some work ourselves in flight. But we do have Blackwell, and I feel like we'll have Buck Newton and Dante to help us get on this board that is all encompassing with deafness and hard of hearing in the state of North Carolina.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I've spoken with Representative Pittman about the School for the Deaf and opportunities that we have before us, and this would be another one. So I would strongly encourage us with his interest in public education. He is the only legislator that we.
I'm sorry, Sharon Law is asking who's speaking.
Rob Boyett.
Okay, thank you.
He is the only legislator in recent memory that has stood in the well of the House of Representatives and given an entire presentation specifically on Wilson County Public Schools. And his interest, not just in the county schools, but in the School for the Deaf is great. So I would encourage us keep him informed and, you know, he'll help us any way he can.
Thank you.
Gary, do you know how many members of the council are there?
The 2 times I've gone, I would say more than 20, but Kevin knows more than I. He was a part of that.
This is Kevin. I have served that council for over 20 years. There's about 23 members. It's an odd number of members, but at the time, we had 2 non-voting members, ex officio members. For example, not DPI, Department of Division of Services for the Blind is an ex officio. VR is a member of that. I represented VR on that council for 15 to 16 years. I also represented NCAD for 6 years, the North Carolina Association for the Deaf. And you are right here about DPI. Talking about speaking up. Well, one thing I'm trying to find out is there's about almost 1,500 students in North Carolina with hearing loss. And the number varies from 1,300 to 1,500. You know, it depends on the day of the week and what time of day. It's all changing. But with this school being taken out from under DPI, going back to the history, the Office of Education Services, back then, we had schools for the schools for the deaf were under Department of Health and Human Services. So the Division of Offices of Education Services, that umbrella fell through, and it became part of DPI due to our former DHS secretary. So there's a lot of history there. So, you know, trying to come out of that DPI and standing alone, we should have a right to have our own seat at the table. This is right for us as far as legislation requires. But like you guys mentioned about Blackwell and another person, Turner from Asheville, his wife is deaf. Yeah, so I think that the time is good now to see something like this happen.
Gary Farmer speaking. And also, the networking with that group is going to help us so much in marketing this school, because our presentation was very, very well received, and these people got information they had not heard of before. There was one man that's head of pediatricians for the state of North Carolina. His name was Dr. Nutt, N-U-T-T.
Yeah, Rob Nutt.
And he was just elated to know about our school, and he followed me around and asked questions even after we got through. And now we're dealing with 2 other organizations. One is called EDI, E-D-H-I, Early Detection for Hearing Impaired. And it's my understanding we are voted to be on that. And I got a tremendous amount of information on that when I talked to Sandy this last week that I will share with Miss Iannucci. And there's 2 gaps before the kids get to us. One is early detection up to age 2, I think. And then there's another group from 3 to 5. Jump in, Iannucci, to help me out.
You're saying it correctly.
This group from 3 to 5 was beginnings. Beginnings fought us tooth and nail. They were more about cochlear implants than ASL in the spectrum of the whole business of lease restriction. They had us as the last place that they would send a kid. Well, as luck would have it, I guess, they have gone belly up. They have no funding whatsoever. So they approached Blackwell and said, please help us. We can help you. Yeah, we'll support you. Yes, please. So now Blackwell has thrown his hat in the ring for those people to be consolidated with the schools for the deaf. And so now there will be no gap. You've got from 0 to 2, from 3 to 5, and then they come here. And so all of those things are coming together, and they're still under the preview of this organization that we're trying to get full membership in. So the time is, like Kevin said, the time is absolutely perfect.
Right. This is Kevin. We do have a friend on the council right now, Laurie Brooke. She used to be a teacher here, and she's on the council representing the Interpreter Association in North Carolina, but she believes ENCSD.
So we actually, a week ago from this past Friday, out of the blue, received an email with an invite to a meeting last week. And during that meeting, the agenda we looked at, Kristen and I both called each other, and she's the superintendent at Morganton, and we looked at the agenda, and to our surprise, we were actually on the agenda to be voted in as council members. And so we attended the meeting, and they did vote us in representing the 2 deaf schools. So we will both have a place on the committee for the advisory committee for Eddie. And the director of Beginnings is actually one of the co-chairs. And we actually met with her and some representatives at Blackwell's office last summer. And we talked about some of the differences, and she basically indicated that there were some of her staff that were going a little rogue, but that their beliefs and philosophies were more in alignment with us than what we thought originally. And so I think there's a lot of common ground that we can find in building that relationship. So we're looking forward to serving on the council and hoping that we can make a difference there.
Gary speaking. Ready? Tony Davis, who is responsible for the council, he wants us desperately to hold a town hall meeting here, and we've already been in conversations with him and Inucci, and yes, we want him here. We want the whole body to come here and see us and see who we are. But he has had a change in thinking here recently, and his change in thinking has promoted a meeting in February in Morganton. He wants to go on a listening tour now of the different regions. And so in February, he is going to have a listening tour starting at Morganton. It's not a town hall. A town hall is when we actually have people, and when they come, we've got answers. We can talk back and forth. This is just a listening tour. So I feel sure that Tony probably will come to us next after he sees how this goes, and come back down here and use our facility for a listening tour, which will be a precursor to a town hall later. Is that what you got, Kevin?
This is Kevin.
Yes. So the listening tour is going to take place well, there's 7 regional centers for the deaf and hard of hearing, 7. One is here in Wilson, one is in Wilmington, one is in Raleigh, et cetera. So I think it'll take place here somewhere, but I do believe that we want to hear from the listening sessions are more done to change the community, like for example, doctors, lawyers, or hospitals, or I don't know, whatever, so that they become more accessible. The schools have a problem with interpreters. For example, me, if I have a child in school, the child wouldn't provide me an interpreter for my IEP meeting for my child in the public schools. And some kind of things like that. Those are some of the things that the deaf community are facing. And just in general, I'm just kind of giving you a general idea, but I believe that's what the listening sessions are about.
New business.
All right, we'll move forward to new business then. Thank you for that. That was a good discussion, by the way.
By the way, we do have our staff here. I'm sorry, Regional Resource Center staff here. Sorry.
Their name?
Do we have a name?
My name is Mikey. I'm a representative for our WRC Center. And hello, good morning. My name is Karen Desalu. I'm the Deaf Services Specialist at the Wilson Regional Center. I'm happy to be here. This is Mikey. Is it okay if I have a question for you all or no?
He could submit that to Miss Ida. She can want some information for sure.
Okay.
Sorry. We'll move forward.
So new business. So we have a lot of board policies that we're going to be reviewing, but we also have our board meeting schedule in your folders, and that is for the remainder of this school year. So we provided that for you just so that you can. And we were looking at the possibility of doing an afternoon session as well. And that was proposed on April 15th at 4. I wanted to make sure that that was good for everybody.
That's a good time.
Okay. So the first line of business, I'll just go into the R&R real quick before we get into the policies. And this, so this list is due for the state at the beginning of February. And so what we basically did was last year's R&R really focused on when we went with Buter, they updated it because we had to update it in the fall. And so when they updated it, they put like campus-wide ADA bathroom renovations. And so we're still working on that. There's going to be, they're working on the McAdams shower rooms and bathrooms right now. They're going to start that project in the near future. And we've already replaced like some of the toilets and sinks and things like that in-house. And we purchased those last year with some of our surplus salaries. So they've gone in and replaced those, and now we have to replace the shower areas, which is the tile. So that's a little more involved. So we're hoping that that will start work here in the next month or so. And so that'll continue because we also have the Vestal dormitory bathrooms that we want to do, as well as looking at like the campus-wide mechanical replacement and electrical. So that is, the mechanical will kind of cover all the heating and the AC and all of those issues that we've been having. They've also, so Eagles Hall, we did get a confirmation that that is going to have to be a legislatively approved project because of the cost of that project. So we're going to have to work with some of our, politicians to see if we can get that moved up on their list and supported financially.
Do we have any idea of the estimate of Eagles Hall?
It would be several million.
Okay.
Yeah, it's up there. It was, they were looking at, let's see, 202 million
Two.
is what it was estimated.
We can't just approve that right now.
Unfortunately, no. If we could approve that, we could approve all the heating.
Forget about the 12,000, we got it.
Yeah.
This sounds like a big bucket of money there. Okay, we'll let the process work.
Yeah, so, we did do some painting on the outside and some refurbishing just to try to keep the building as, from deteriorating further. We do need to try to go in and do something with the air to get it moving around to help protect the inside of it more. But that would also take some money to do. So there's some roof repair that needs to be done, mechanical work that, it's pretty much everything in that building needs to be redone.
Because it's set idle for how many years? Oh, idle.
Yeah. it's been a very
Early
long time.
2000.
I'd say at least 25.
Yeah, okay. I understand now.
Yes, so we want to try to keep it from further deterioration. And then there was an approval to do window replacement in Alfred, Mayfield, and Woodard. And because the Massey project here took more money, they moved that money to this building. And so we will have to resubmit that to get that approved again. And then we're looking to get campus-wide ADA signage on campus, that people know which buildings are where and, where different exits and things of that nature are, as well as we're in the process of doing a project right now where it will put numbers. They went through each building and we had to reassign numbers to each room. And so we have to put the number, the decal on the door. And that is for safety reasons, so that if, the fire department or the police department or someone comes in, they can quickly identify what room they need to go to. And it's a number system that makes sense. The numbers were kind of all over the place before. So we're in the process of trying to do that right now for some of that. But there's a lot of ADA signage that needs to be done, so that's just one part of it. And then the McAdams roof replacement, campus-wide interior ADA improvements, and that would also entail, we are trying to get a grant for a security system, for alarm system that is deaf-friendly, and it's very costly. It's going to cost about $170,000 to install a system that has a strobe light that would be next to. The lucky thing is the TVs that we currently have installed, they're in perfect condition still and can be used, but they weren't big enough when they were purchased to actually draw attention to them. And so what we would do is put a strobe light by them, have the strobe light go off, and then have a video that immediately plays with an interpreter indicating what type of emergency it is, like whether it would be a tornado or take cover for a tornado or intruder or whatever the emergency situation would be. But the strobe lights, and then we would have to have some wiring and lighting put in each restroom so that it could be detected, and that if they're in the restroom, they know that there's an emergency on campus. So it's, the whole system campus-wide.
This is Kevin.
Food for thought. Just keep in mind that people who are deaf and blind, sometimes strobe lights impact them hard. And also people who have epilepsy, the strobe lights can also make them have issues. So just keep that in mind as you're going forward.
Yeah, it's very difficult because there's no perfect system. And it's trying to get people's attention. And so, safety being important. So we've got to look at all of that. But those are great points to bring up. And so then, so Vestal Hall and McAdams, just again, just some safety upgrades that need to be done in those buildings. Campus-wide exterior ADA improvements, for instance, like the sidewalk going down to Alford, it's not perfectly straight. And we would eventually like to get an awning that goes over that so that when the students are going from Alford building up to McAdams or up to lunch, they'll have coverage if there's raining or something like that. So that's on our wish list. And then campus-wide paving improvements, which some of that is going to be done on the back side of the campus with the drainage system that they're putting in place. They're going to have to redo a little bit of that already. So, and then the Williamson Gym is currently under construction with some pool renovations, but they had to stop. They were planning on doing some of the painting and some of the repairs in there, and they got a little bit of it done, but they weren't able to do it all because of the cost of abatement. They were going to have to abate that area, and that is very costly, so they had to stop with that area. So that will continue to be on our list as well. And then our electrical upgrades. So that is pretty extensive as well. So that is what the R&R list is in terms of priorities. Any questions or concerns with any of those?
Did you say pool repairs? What was that in there?
At the very end, I said that they had started some. They were going to scrape the paint and paint it, but they were going to have to. They started doing some of those repairs with the cracks and things like that were in the wall. But then they indicated that abatement would have to take place for any additional work in there, and the abatement was too expensive right now to include in the job that is being done in the gym. So that's going to have to be its own. Yes.
Gary speaking. Does that include the buttress to hold that wall up that they may be considering?
They are structurally, that's the work that they're doing right now because that was tumbling down, basically,
Yes.
crumbling down. So they have put supports in place, and that wall's being repaired now.
Then that leads to the next question, that road that I hate, will that dissuade them from continuing to think about paving that little road there?
Yes, that road will not be paved. It's emergency purposes only.
Thank you.
Any other questions with the R&R?
Thank you.
The next thing, the North Carolina, we just received an update. They've been talking about how the deaf schools can get a school report card like the LEAs do. And I don't know how familiar you are with that process, but each school system gets, or each school itself, and then each school system gets a report card in terms of their growth, proficiency on state testing, graduation rate, all of that is included in that report card grade. And so in the past, we have been excluded from that process. However, they have indicated that they were going to look at us getting involved in that process and getting a school grade. The concern I have is, last year I had an email and they wanted us to participate in EVOS, which is the state system that calculates your growth and your proficiency and your, how well your school does on your testing and everything. And so, but you have to have a certain sample size in order to be included in that data. And none of our classes right now are large enough to be included in that data. And so, they wanted us to register last year, and I'm like, you didn't do it. So I got this nasty email like saying you didn't do something you were supposed to do. And I, pushed back and just said, it's my understanding that because our class sizes are da-da-da, and I listed all the class sizes for each grade level, that we, weren't large enough to be able to have a sample size. And they said, you are correct, so don't worry about this, is the response I got back. So now we have until February 20th. We just received a letter last week indicating that we have to choose an option for how we want our school to be graded on this report card. Option 1 is to participate like every other LEA in the state. Option 2 is to mark insufficient data, and the data would be used for 3 years to basically develop a grade. The other option is to propose a modification. And that would basically look at an alternative grading approval process. That would have to be approved by the State Board of Education if we choose option C. They were recommending that we choose option B because of the timeline involved. However, I would like to propose that we do option C and modify it. And what I'd like to propose is that we use anytime, if we can use EVOS data because we have enough of a population to do so, to do that. However, if we don't, to use an alternative. And that would be our data that we receive from our benchmark data with Bedrock, as well as our American Reading curriculum that they're just starting to implement now. And use that data as well as a modified graduation rate. And the graduation rate, our graduation rate of our typical students is 4 years, generally speaking. However, we have our Extend 1 class. And when you are so small, one student that doesn't graduate because they continue receiving services until they're 22 negatively skews your data. And so if they're continued to be counted the way that they are with the LEAs, that we will take a huge hit on that. And so what I'd like to do is propose a couple options for that. And I don't know which option you all would want or what would be approved by the state. But to use everything else that we can, if we have enough sample size, to add the ARC and the Bedrock data to that to see where our students are growing in terms of vocabulary development and ASL development, along with the reading development. That would all measure those. skill areas. And then with the graduation rate, do one of three things. I doubt that they would do option A, which is to exclude the Extend 1, but that's always an option. And then the other one would be to look at, we know our Extend 1 students typically go until age 22. So if they go to age 22, you can count that in the regular graduation rate, just kind of do an alternative for them. Or we graduate them in the 4 years and we continue to service them, which a lot of LEAs do. And they would count in your graduation rate, but they would continue to be serviced. Now there's a disadvantage with that because that sounds like it would be a simple fix. However, some students, their cognitive ability is enough to know that they should be graduating, and they get excited about graduating, and then when they come back, they don't understand, well, why am I back? And so sometimes you'll see a little bit of a different child when they do come back. So those would be the three options, but I think if we were to do that, that would at least be a fair way of trying to, use the accountability model towards our special population.
What about math? Is that evaluated?
Math, we actually, we're doing better in the high school math than what we are the other maths right now. But we're hoping that some of the changes that we're implementing will improve those lower grade maths as well.
What I'm asking, like, it seems like the state, does the state only look at reading? They don't look at math?
No, they look at math as well.
So it seems like we would need some kind of measure that also evaluates math, I would think, wouldn't you?
And I think, it's one of those things where there's a lot of reading and math as well. And I think, if you know education, you know that. So when you look at a grade, and if, our students' growth is going up in their vocabulary and their reading skills, you would hope that some of those math skills would come up as well. But if your reading skills are low, that's going to affect your math grades as well, or scores.
But I think that if you're trying to
modify that as well.
If you're trying to prove to the state we have something comparable, it just seems like there needs to be something
for math.
Not ignore math, because, if I were just any kind of legislator or whoever, DPI, whoever's looking at it, I would say, well, the question I ask, where's the math? Because if that is evaluated for everybody else, I just feel like there's got to be some kind of measure, possibly coming out of ENCSD, but also some measure of math, I would think.
Right, yeah. I agree with you. And it's one of those things where, the state it's for proficiency, it's 80% of your grade, and your growth is 20% of your grade. I'd love to see that almost flip-flopped, because I think as long as students are growing, especially if they're several years behind, if that growth is the most important. And so, those percentages are concerning, but I know they've been debating those percentages for years and they haven't changed. So I don't know how open they would be for us to look more at growth than proficiency, especially knowing that students who are deaf and hard of hearing tend to lag behind several years anyway.
This is Kevin. I have a question. This is a double-edged sword. I'm just being honest. You can't compare our students to students in the public school system. Really, you cannot. All of our students have disabilities. All of them are delayed compared to all the children. And all our kids are born to hearing parents. Therefore, they are language deprived in the first place. So honestly, comparing two different categories here, it would kill us. I mean, this is comparing data, statistics, and all that. I mean,
But Kevin, don't you agree that it's better to do option C where we have more control than option B where it is just a flat out comparison over a 3-year period? So I don't think we have the option of, I mean, from what you've said, we don't have the option of not evaluating. We have to evaluate. So to me, Ms. Iannucci's way of, let's do this and let's do that, seems kind of like the best we can do under the circumstances if they are requiring something.
Can I say something? Can I say something?
oh, well, my big concern would be the parents comparing those numbers with public schools.
Yeah.
If the child is getting the same kind of education in public school, in the mainstream environment, really the public school system is not, we cannot compare them, mainstream deaf students to mainstream deaf students to deaf students. They would do that to balance them out. They're all in that group. They're all deaf or hard of hearing. Devil's in the details.
There's a lot of subgroups that get included in LEAs that are in the same boat. Your whole special ed population, OCS population. And so these arguments that you're raising, they've been debated for years. And the state still has the system. And so, it's trying to make the best of the hand that we've been dealt, is the way I'm looking at it, because those arguments are the same that's been debated for years.
Rachel?
This is Rachel. A couple things that I was going to bring up. I think Ms. Iannucci's proposal about the students who are on the alternate achievement standards aligned to taking alternate assessments, that's your Extend 1 kids. That makes sense because that's supposed to be your 1% most cognitively disabled children. They almost always stay till 22. So I think there's a very good argument to be made that if they graduate by 22, that they should be counted positively towards your graduation rate. Versus just as they age out and haven't met graduation requirements, then they would be not a graduate. But if they meet graduation requirements within that time, then there's an argument they should be counted. The issue here on the graduation rate is that graduation rate is defined by students in that cohort who meet graduation requirements in 4 years. So there are several, so your children who stay longer than 4 years, your children who are entitled to service until the year that they're 22, would count against you in the graduation rate, but that shouldn't be the case for kids whose disability contemplates that they're probably going to remain that long, right? So I think there's a very good argument to be made for Ms. Iannucci's approach on that. The other thing about, to Kevin's point, is if you were going to make some kind of comparison, it would have to be deaf students here in comparison to deaf students, like if the data was disaggregated to that specific level, to deaf students in other settings. So at least you're comparing students with the same disabilities. Presumably, they might have the same, I understand what you're saying, Kevin, is even so, a deaf student may have come to school already behind on pre-academic skills based on the communication delays or struggles that the deaf community might have. So I think that would be important for there to be some kind of recognition there that it's not the same, particularly given how many deaf preschools exist.
Amen. And that is where the devils are in the details. So that, they do not divide between the deaf, sorry, I started speaking.
The deaf, they do not separate themselves. Separate. Don't separate them. Don't. Encompass them all in one group. And they call them hearing impaired. That means a person that slightly has hearing problems.
Right.
That's true.
I missed that beep, oops, bam. That's one of those. So a person is totally deaf, can't use hearing aids, right? I mean, that's the comparison. Your ideas are right, but the facts don't agree.
Yeah.
It, based on what I know, you know, unless that has changed.
The other point is that, yeah, Dave Tolman. The other point is that the school system, let's just say Wake County, for example, may have a child who is so disabled or so not succeeding in school that ENCSD is the place that they will send the child because they feel that ENCSD can handle them more successfully. Well, already you're starting with a child that Wake County saying, no, we don't want to deal with this child, we cannot serve him properly. So you're already starting with a population that's going to be more difficult in many cases, not every case. Sometimes people do choose a residential school, but oftentimes it's more the school system. Wayne County, whatever the county, like, we can't handle this child, so you're automatically starting from a much more difficult situation. So again, you can't really successfully compare them. But I don't know that the state of North Carolina understands any of that. So it seems like we need to let your creativity flourish as you try to figure out a way to, you know, work it out.
And let me say to that point, even for the other students, when they transfer in, like, let's say you weren't the school for the deaf. Let's say you were National Rocky Mountain Schools, or I'm arbitrarily choosing a school system, not one I represent. But for that student's score to be counted in that school district, they have to be enrolled in that school district for at a minimum amount of days. I think that would be important for you guys, you know, at the very least. I don't think that addresses your whole issue, but if a student transfers in, we should at least have to have them X amount of days in a year for that score to count towards us at all. You know, I think, and that's consistent with what we do in public schools with kids that are transferring in. But there is that issue if they've been educated for 5 years in another school district and they transfer in here. I think there should be some consideration about for how long should we get that score versus whose score is that basically for that student prior to them, you know. So I think one way to deal with that I know has support in their other analysis is at least have a minimum amount of days they have to be enrolled here. They don't enroll here in March, take a test in May, and then the ENCSD gets credited with that score. And that's for better or worse. If they do great, we'll have missed out. But if they don't, but the truth of the matter is that really it shouldn't be our score because we've only had that child 2 months and probably a month of that they're acclimating.
Right, and that's where the difficulty comes in, because if our sample size isn't large enough to be part of EBOS, then we don't participate in the state roster system, which would calculate that type of percentage. Because like wherever that child was previously, they would claim him for that portion of the year. And then we would say, we've had him for this portion of the year. And that they would, like, the system would automatically divide the percentage up. But if we're not any boss, that system's not available to us.
So I would recommend, Charlotte, if the board votes for you to come up with a unique proposal, that includes some minimum amount of time in a year that child would have to be enrolled here before they count at all.
Gary speaking. Wilson County Schools, we had a charter school here, and we didn't realize it till we saw a pattern happening. They took their students that were having problems with their scores and their testing, and right toward the end of the year, they said they couldn't serve them and they had to go back to public school. And we, with the insight over a period of time, said, whoa, we see what's happening here. It was lowering their scores. So we arbitrarily came up with the time, and I can't tell you, I can't remember exactly, but it was like you said, Rachel, it was way early into the school year, and then after that, no, I'm sorry, you could not. transfer that kid, he was yours. So, but then I sit in IEP meetings, and like you say, Kevin, there's probably 5 different levels of deafness. It's all consolidated in from a hard-hearing person to a profound person. And as I sit in an IEP meeting, and they'd say, well, what about the Eastern North Carolina School for the Deaf? And they would turn around and use those scores against us. No, Mr. Parent or Miss Parent, you won't want to do that. That's the least restrictive area, but I mean, it's the most restrictive area because look at their scores. Well, they sent us the kids that they could not handle and that could not make the scores, and then they would turn around and use it against us, like you said, a double-edged sword. So, yeah, but here again, we've been fighting this battle forever.
Right. So with your permission, I'd like to submit an alternative and look at and talk with my math teachers as well and the principal and see if we can come up with some other options for our students. But I would like to look at seeing if we can get it approved.
I think that's a good approach, by the way. The best approach I hear us talking. And still, you're going to have some struggles there too, because it's none of it's going to be perfect.
Right.
You know, but it's the best that we can get at this stage. Rob, go ahead.
This is Rob talking. I agree very much with what Ms. Iannucci is talking about. And the board allowing her to develop the best system for evaluating our students and the program that is going on at the school to address those students' needs. I'm not as familiar with the school system evaluation elements, but I'm very familiar with the legislative program evaluation division. And they go time to time to different departments and they evaluate the evaluators. They see what you're doing, how you're evaluating your own programs, and they apply their standards to it and report directly back to the General Assembly. And when they were first started, I happened to be in state government, and as an aside, and this is a very subjective viewpoint, they had a lot of 20-somethings that first got hired within that program evaluation division. A lot of accountants, a lot of people that really didn't understand evaluation in different modes, different departments. They came to the State Historic Sites and Museums operation that I was involved with and looked at our program statewide and asked, and I'll never forget this meeting, and asked why we located the Civil War battlefield 20 miles from Interstate 95.
Because that's where it's.
Why didn't we put it closer? So I'm very aware, we used to call them PED.
That's fine.
When they come to your department, your division, they're sent by the General Assembly to evaluate how you evaluate your program. And so I'm all in support of what Ms. Iannucci is proposing to the board.
What I would suggest, if the board is inclined to do that, is for there to be a motion to authorize Ms. Iannucci to propose and negotiate an accountability model with the state.
And I'll make that motion.
I second that motion.
But I would like to, before we go on, if I will,
Let's move to second your question.
Yes.
Comment.
I would like it to, come back to us for further discussion before it goes to the state. Well, what is your deadline? Do you have a deadline?
February 20th.
Oh, okay.
So we would have to call a special
Saturday, next
meeting.
will be 18.
It's the 18th. Is the 20th deadline, is that when they have to have approved it by? So we'll have to go to the state board and be approved before that?
Yes.
Well, let me see when the next state board meeting is.
Or could we talk about it in our policy meeting, perhaps? I mean, Gary will be there, I'll be there. I mean, are you comfortable with that or not?
So you wouldn't have a board, you wouldn't have a board vote and you don't
Well,
have a
that's
policy,
true.
you won't have a policy on it.
That's true.
So I think if the board wants, final say so, and it would have to be pretty quick. I was gonna look and see when the state board meeting is, but it's probably a week before that, I would think, or more. So you're talking about in the next 2 weeks, I would think that you would need to have a special called meeting.
I don't know. I mean, maybe we don't need it.
Let me see when the state board meeting is.
So, but I hear you saying that you'd like to have some input.
Yeah, but I could even just talk to Ms. Heinrich.
That's
I
fine.
mean, I'd be happy to do that. I'm not sure it needs a separate call meeting, but I kind of like to just go over it, give you my opinion.
The State Board of Education meets February 4th through 5, so it's not clear to me from what you got, Ms. Iannucci, whether or not they're asking you to propose something by the 20th that can be presented at their March 4th meeting, or if they're indicating that you need to have something to them. And I would think if they meant for you to have it for their February meeting, they would have given you a date before the February board meeting.
Well, I think the way the letter kind of is outlined, and because they're encouraging you because of the time involved to do the 3-year, my guess is they know that it'll take time for the state board to approve it, and they're wanting to kind of move it along. So my guess is they would have to approve it during that 4-5.
The March 4th through 4th, 5th meeting, I would think so. I would treat the February 20th, if that's the deadline they gave you, I would treat that as your deadline to get that in. And probably that seems consistent with getting it to the Board of Education, the State Board on March 4th.
This is Kevin.
So sometimes when Morganton does, do you know what Morganton's doing? Did they get the same letter that you got?
This has happened very quickly, because we knew it was kind of, we heard some things and movement towards this direction, but the letter was actually dated the 15th and was sent to us late Thursday of last week. So this has been very quick.
They-
Yeah. My guess is also that if they want you to do option 2, that's what they would like, they're going to scrutinize this pretty carefully and look for ways to say, no, this is not acceptable. So I think it needs to be pretty well thought out.
Yes.
Which is not to imply that you haven't already done it, but I just feel like, they're going to be looking for ways to say this is not acceptable.
Gary speaking, in light of just what you said, would you get with Mandy and make sure, because we kind of did that in a hurry, you had the proper words for the motion, would you put it in a more succinct form and give it to Mandy for the minutes, please?
Sure. We still have a motion, but we didn't.
We didn't vote.
second it.
I interrupted.
So we have a motion on the floor, and I think we have a
We've
second.
already had that second, and we had a
Gary,
discussion.
Discussion,
Can I just be clear, Mr. Farmer seconded?
Yes, I second.
Yes, I mean. So if there's no further discussion, I'll just call for the vote on this. All in favor of Ms. Iannucci and the motion? Thank you. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. It's good discussion on that too, because there's some of those unknown things for some of us, and I'm glad to hear what you're saying. Okay.
continue on, or?
All right, so, Rachel, do you want to go over the DOA MOU?
Sure. We had another meeting virtually with DOA, this time with the secretary. And they're wanting to wrap up the DOA memorandum. And just so, just to remind the board kind of where we were on that, the statute that kind of reallocated your oversight and made you a state agency provided in the statute that the Department of Administration, the State Department of Administration was going to assist by providing these services you may need. The statute doesn't say anything about an administrative fee. And so we weren't trying to make waves, but we were curious as to so the DOA has asked for $60,000 to cover the administrative expenses. So I had a great conversation with their counsel, and, just kind of talking through where does the authority for the administrative fee come from at all, and they acknowledge that it's not in the statute. The statute does call for us to develop an MOU, and they believe it could be part of the MOU, which is what they proposed. And it wasn't in the original versions, but it came back in a later version after a phone call to Cheryl asking about the $60,000. So, we're trying to work with DOA on that. I asked them they indicated they had data that supported the $60,000 fee based on hours that they're spending on kind of each area of administration that they've been helping with. And they were, it'd be public record, but they provided that data to us as well. We got that data last week. We got it the same day that the phone call was scheduled to have a conversation with the secretary. One thing that we wanted to do, we asked, and they revised the MOU to include a statement, and we had a lot of discussion about this, or a fair amount of discussion about this. What I was concerned about is maybe not this year so much, because they have done a fair amount of work this year in terms of helping you guys get transitioned over and some of the pieces that needed to be part of administration. But what I was really concerned about is that this doesn't become a $60,000 recurring expense for you, because presumably there'll be several of those administrative functions you're able to figure out and absorb and already have on your own. And so I just didn't want you to be committed in an MOU to a blanket $60,000 administrative fee. The version they sent over Friday includes a statement in there that the $60,000 fee will be reassessed each year. And so I've talked to Simone and Cheryl, and we basically are trying to keep track of the hours that we're spending, or even hours that we're helping, because it's my understanding that there have been some hours that we've spent helping them figure out some of the pieces about, 115C or some of those kinds of things. So the community, we're giving, not just getting on that piece. So where we are on the MOU is, we had a meeting, they're at $60,000. They acknowledge that they're willing to put, and did put in the most recent draft we got Friday, that fee is not a forever fee. That fee can be renegotiated yearly, in terms of a discussion about whether or not the fee remains fair, given the number of hours. I think it was $48 and some odd cents, maybe 73 cents, that they were charging per hour, of the hours that they had included. Now, there were some pieces I need to call her back about that. When I got into the worksheet, they sent a worksheet that justified the $60,000 you were billed, but it also included 120 hours of time that was attributed to the other two schools. So that right there would be almost $5,000. That really ought to be a reduction based on their worksheet. So the secretary was very clearly like, we need to get this signed, go do what you're going to do, meet with your boards, come back to me with some signed MOU. So there's a lot of pressure to wrap it up. I just wanted you to know all the ins and outs of what we know about how the fee was arrived at, that we were able to negotiate new language in the MOU that acknowledged that next year's fee may not be $60,000, it may be more like 40 or 35, and that we would keep trying to chip away at that each year to the point where we were self-sufficient on the administrative pieces. Do you guys have any questions about that?
Thank you.
Of course, happy to do it, happy to have those conversations.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Ron.
this is Rob speaking. I am very familiar with administrative fees. And when I was in state government, it was generally accepted as 3% of budget. It might go back to the state budget office, or it might go back to, the agency. And within an agency, budget office could charge a 3% administration fee. We charge that at the county level for inter-county work that the budget office does, or something else like that, personnel office does. But most of the time it's a percentage. So to get a flat fee is probably a better solution for us, at least temporarily, than a percentage of overall budget.
Yes, and a couple things I said on the call, just for full transparency for the board as you try to consider this issue, is one, that the amount of time they spent was actually much greater than what they had recorded, that they were sure there was time that was spent that wasn't reported. So they felt good about that. We asked about how many of the state agencies that they work with, do they charge an administrative fee? I think you said 5 out of 12. Is that what you understood,
Yes.
Cheryl? So it's not obviously not unheard of to have an administrative fee. And I will say my impressions from Cheryl and Simone, step in if I'm wrong about this, but we are grateful for they've definitely been a resource for our folks. So we're not at all, and we approached it very much from the perspective of, we understand what it is to have responsibilities that don't come with any money, right? So we're familiar with that, and we're not trying to put that on them. We're just trying to figure out how do we become self-sufficient in this so that we don't always have to incur this fee. And when I talked to them, they were very receptive, because what I told them, I use the robotics team. I'm like, that $60,000 represents something for the school, we've got frozen positions, there's no state budget, this is a tough year. They also indicated that though the MOU doesn't speak to this specifically, I asked them how it would need to be paid, because it would be different to write a $60,000 check than for us to be able to maybe catch up or whatever and budget for that monthly. And he indicated a willingness, that this is the secretary, indicated a willingness to do kind of a payment plan on that administrative fee, which I think is helpful in trying to budget for you guys. So that's what I could think of that came out of that conversation that was important. Can you think of anything else, Cheryl?
I think just, reiterating that DOA has been very helpful and very supportive of everything that they're doing with us. And, we certainly didn't want our pushback to look like we weren't appreciative of the support that they've given us. And, they've made a transition which could have been a lot worse, a little bit smoother once we made that transition. And, the support is definitely a lot better. So, yeah.
And just so the board knows, our whole approach was, we are stewards of public money. And this is in no way a challenge to the great service we've got from DOA. It's really just these dollars represent services to kids. So we're really just trying to make sure that the fee is fair based on the actual time being spent and in comparison to the other schools. And they were my conversation was great. There was no tension. We had a great conversation. So. Ms. Simone had her hand up.
Yes, no.
And this is Simone speaking. One thing particular that needs to be understood too, of course, like Rachel said, Cheryl and I, and Rachel all spoke in regards to this. There's a difference between DOA being supportive and providing resources and DOA doing jobs. And a lot of this is coming from them actually doing someone's job. And that part they didn't sign up for. They did sign up to be a resource. They did sign up to be a backup for us when needed, but not to actually do our jobs. So we're all grouped together in the residential schools, but each residential school has different needs. And that's the thing that is trying to really be streamlined. What does this school need as opposed to this school, and what does this school need as opposed to this school? So it's going to be different across the board, but that's the biggest thing. It's more than just, they're doing more than just resourcing. They're actually doing some jobs. So it's two-part on both ends, but that's a big piece of it as well.
That's true. Thanks for pointing that out. So can I say one more thing? Actually, two more things. The one is, my understanding is they started with one MOU for the 3 schools and they split them out in recognition of the fact that the different schools have different needs and different fees would make sense, would be fair under those circumstances. That's the first thing. They kind of split those out. The other is the Governor Moorhead School has already signed the MOU that DOA sent to them. So from there, I mean, almost immediately
They were
with
getting a
no
bargain.
questions. So just so you have the whole lay of the land, that's what we know right now.
Thank you, Rachel.
Yes, sir. And what we would be looking for is permission to go ahead and negotiate and finalize the MOU with the $60,000 fee in it.
Any questions? Okay, so we need a motion or,
Yes, sir.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
okay, so second, it's moved in second. Hopefully Mandy get all that. Yeah. Any other further comments? All in favor? Thank you. Same sign. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
And this is Cheryl. We also had an MOU with Dr. Sarah McManus, and I'll just explain a little bit of the background with this. So Sarah is our person that all 3 schools relied on she did like the central office of data management for our student database for Power School, and then it changed over to Infinite Campus. So she was the person that, as we were making that transition, that scheduled all the trainings and, got down into the nitty gritty and supported our data manager at the time, who was Mandy. And then she continues to support that level. We also have her, she does CTE support. So she's kind of like serves as a CTE director for all 3 schools. We have a CTE coordinator, but the director needs additional certifications that the 3 schools didn't have. And so she fulfills that. She also takes our IT, like whenever we're getting the permissions from DIT and that process, Hugh will get it to a certain point, he kicks it up to her, and then she takes it over and drives it the rest of the way. And so, anytime there's data breaches, anything like that, she's heavily involved in that process. So the 3 schools have basically been responsible in the past for a third of her salary. Unfortunately, when we received all of our reports and books, her salary did not get included in any of our reports. And so we were not aware of how she was even getting paid until about November. And we found out that her salary actually comes from our salary reserves. Our salary reserve money is for, like, if we give a raise or if we, have additional duties that we have to put on a staff member because they're doing 2 roles. That's where those dollars come from. If we have to adjust a salary, that's where those dollars come from. If we have to, because, we can't find somebody to do a data management job and all of a sudden we have a data manager and they're making X number of dollars at such and such school, that falls within that range that we can provide, we may need to up that money in order to get somebody that's qualified for that position. So that's all where that money came from. And so a lot of the changes that we were making and trying to make it more fair in terms of salaries with people in the same positions and qualifications and so forth, we had to put some of that work on hold because that's where that money was drawn from. And so we're in the process of doing the MOU. However, because she is housed at GMS, and we were looking in GMS because Chris Campbell serves both the other two schools, instead of, us all paying for attorneys, having one attorney to draw it up and then present it, and us figure out, and negotiate it from there. But that's kind of where we're at with it.
And an update on that, I did email them this morning when I saw this. I emailed Chris Campbell's firm and said they asked about a time to connect on that. So I'll set up a time with them this week to connect on the MOU. And they also will, I anticipate there'll be a future one about the possibility of the internal auditor position being split. So.
All right. All right, any questions before we move on to policies?
Let's move on to policies.
Okay. So our parental involvement policy 1310/2002.
First reading.
This is basically, this goes along with the state's just parental rights for parents. That includes like your ESSA, your FERPA laws, your IDEA, 504, ADA, and Title IX. So all of those policies and procedures and guidelines were kind of taken into consideration in developing this. And so it gives a clear definition of what a parent and family involvement is and how parents can be encouraged to be involved in school and any grievance process that would be wrapped up in the process.
We need to make a motion to approve.
Yeah, well, this is for the
Just
first
reading,
reading.
so you
First
really don't have to
reading.
do anything,
Okay.
you can approve them on second reading.
Okay.
She's just introducing you to them, I think.
Okay.
Yes. And then the second one is professional and staff development. And this one just, again, gives clear definitions of what professional development is, what a licensed staff member is versus a non-licensed, and continuing educational units, which are your CEUs, which is required by educators to earn a certain amount in order to renew their license every 5 years. Also, required participation in ongoing professional training and learning is also a condition of their employment. And this also aligns with the licensure process for renewals and OSHA performance standards and compliance. There's also some instructional practices, including like equity and inclusive practices. Deaf education is also part of it, and deaf culture, as well as ASL proficiency is also supported. And the next one is the prohibition against discrimination, harassment, and bullying. And again, these just follow the guidelines and protections that are under Title IX and Title X, 504, ADA, IDEA, FERPA, and other state laws and federal laws. And a lot of these have to do with Title IX and non-discrimination. So I'm not going to read a lot of it just because they're very specific. They have to be very specifically written to meet Title IX, so it's pretty self-explanatory. But if you have any questions after you read it, we can certainly look at that before the second read.
But all of these is Title IX related. Some of the rest.
Most of them.
Last.
Yes, the first two and the last two. And the graduation requirements, we may have to make just a small addendum depending on what the final accountability model is. And then the revisions to the technology, that's just based on the new guidelines. And that basically looks at the internet safety policy as well as the social media and mental health instruction around technology. Any questions about anything before you do your first reading?
Given that most of it's Title IX related, it's not a lot of important understanding of where we fit in.
Yes.
Let's move on.
Okay, so that pretty much concludes the new business.
Okay. Then we're going to closed session because we have some discussion on HR issues.
Yes.
Okay. So we should take a short break, 5 minutes. No such thing as 5-minute break, but we start there anyway. So we have a motion to go into closed session. I believe Gary normally reads those. Take us.
Sure. Just for HR?
Yeah.
Purposes?
That's, yes, for HR purposes.
Okay,
That's what it says.
okay. Is that all we need? Okay, you need just, then we'll accept the motion to go into closed session for confidential personnel information under NC Gen Stat 319, 115C-319 through 321.
So we have a motion to go into closed session. Do I have a second?
A second.
Dave seconded. All in favor going into closed session? Okay. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. We're going into closed session. We're going to take a 5-minute break and come back into closed session.